The telegraph key clicked beneath Olivia Sutton's trembling fingers as she tapped out the desperate message from the wounded cowboy, who had stumbled into her father's general store just after dawn on that sweltering August morning in 1878. Blood soaked through his shirt, and his breathing came in ragged gasps as he gripped her wrist with surprising strength for a dying man. "Send word to Kane Yates at the Double Cross Ranch outside Ventura," he wheezed, pressing a crumpled paper into her palm. "Tell him the Dalton brothers ambushed us at Coyote Pass. Tell him Jack needs help now." Before she could ask another question, the man's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed against the counter, his life slipping away before the town doctor could even be summoned. Olivia stared at the message she had just transmitted, her heart hammering against her ribs as she realized the import of what she had just learned. The Dalton brothers were notorious outlaws who had been terrorizing the California territory for months, robbing stages and rustling cattle with impunity. If they had ambushed Kane Yates and this Jack person, then Kane might be lying wounded or worse in that God-forsaken canyon, waiting for help that might not arrive in time. She glanced at the dead man on her floor, then at the empty street outside. Her father had left 3 days ago to visit her ailing grandmother in San Francisco and would not return for another week. The marshal had ridden out yesterday chasing reports of cattle thieves near the mountains. There was no one else. She made her decision in the space of a heartbeat. Olivia grabbed her riding coat from the hook by the door, stuffed what medical supplies she could find into her saddlebags, and ran to the stable behind the store where her mare, Juniper, waited. The journey to Coyote Pass would take at least 3 hours if she pushed hard, but every minute counted. She knew the route well enough, having ridden with her father on supply runs to the outlying ranches many times. As she swung into the saddle, her mind raced through everything she knew about treating wounds and injuries, gleaned from years of helping Doc Harrison when he came through town. It was not much, but it would have to be enough. The California sun beat down mercilessly as Olivia urged Juniper into a gallop, leaving Ventura behind in a cloud of dust. The coastal hills gave way to drier terrain as she headed inland, following the rutted road that wound through golden grasslands and scrub oak. Her auburn hair, hastily pinned that morning, came loose from its bun and streamed behind her like a banner. She was 22 years old, had never fired a gun in her life, and was riding alone into territory where dangerous men might still be lurking. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was madness, but something deeper drove her forward. Perhaps it was the memory of her mother, who had died when Olivia was 12, because help had arrived too late. Perhaps it was simply that she could not live with herself if she sent that message and did nothing more. The landscape grew rougher as she approached the foothills where Coyote Pass cut through the mountains. Rocky outcroppings jutted from the earth like broken teeth, and the vegetation thinned to hardy shrubs and twisted juniper trees. Olivia slowed Juniper to navigate the treacherous path, her eyes scanning constantly for any sign of movement. The pass itself was a narrow defile between 2 steep ridges, the perfect place for an ambush. Her mouth went dry as she entered the canyon, every nerve on edge. She found them about half a mile in. 2 horses stood ground-tied near a cluster of boulders, and she could see a man lying motionless on the ground. Another figure crouched beside him, and as she drew closer, she realized he was pressing what looked like a torn shirt against the wounded man's side. The crouching man looked up sharply at the sound of her approach, his hand dropping to the pistol at his hip. Olivia reined in Juniper and raised her hands to show she meant no harm. "I sent your message," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "I am here to help." The man rose slowly to his feet, and Olivia got her first good look at Kane Yates. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell past his collar and several days' worth of stubble shadowing his jaw. Blood stained his hands and shirt, though she could not tell if it was his or his companion's. His eyes, she noticed, were a startling shade of gray, and they fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He looked exhausted and wary, like a wolf that had been hunted too long. "You should not be here," he said, his voice rough. "This is no place for a woman alone." Olivia dismounted and pulled her saddlebags free. "The man who brought your message died on my store floor 10 minutes after he arrived. The marshal is gone. My father is in San Francisco and you needed help. So here I am." She moved past him to kneel beside the wounded man, whose face was pale and clammy with shock. "How bad is it?" Kane hesitated, then dropped back down beside her. "Bullet went clean through his side, but he has lost a lot of blood. I stopped the worst of the bleeding, but I do not know how to do more than that." There was a note of helplessness in his voice that told her this man was not accustomed to feeling powerless. "The Daltons caught us by surprise when we were moving cattle through the pass. They shot Jack first, then Tommy. Tommy managed to get away, but Jack could not ride. I stayed with him." "How long ago?" Olivia asked, already unpacking her supplies. She had clean bandages, carbolic acid for disinfecting, needle and thread for suturing, and a bottle of laudanum for pain. It was not much, but it was more than they had now. 4 hours, maybe 5. Kane watched as she began examining the wound, his expression unreadable. "The Daltons took our cattle and rode north. I do not think they will come back, but I cannot be certain." Olivia pushed that terrifying thought aside and focused on what she could control. Jack was unconscious now, which was both good and bad. Good because she would not have to worry about him moving while she worked. Bad because it meant he was in serious danger. She cleaned the entry and exit wounds with carbolic acid, then began stitching them closed with as much skill as she could muster. Her hands shook at first, but steadied as she fell into the rhythm of the work. Beside her, Kane held Jack still and handed her what she needed before she could ask for it. He had good instincts, she realized, and gentle hands despite his rough appearance. "You came alone," Kane said after a long silence. It was not quite a question, but she heard the disbelief in his tone. "As I said, there was no one else." Olivia tied off the final suture and began wrapping clean bandages around Jack's torso. "Besides, waiting for someone else meant you would both likely die. I could not accept that." Kane was quiet for a moment, and when she glanced up, she found him staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. "That was incredibly foolish," he said finally, but there was no heat in the words. "And incredibly brave. I do not know whether to thank you or shake some sense into you." "Thank me later, if we all survive this," Olivia replied, though a small smile tugged at her lips despite the gravity of their situation. She administered a careful dose of laudanum, then sat back on her heels and wiped her bloody hands on a spare cloth. "We need to get him somewhere safer. This pass is too exposed, and he needs proper rest and care. The double cross is another 2 hours from here," Kane said, "but Jack cannot ride that far in his condition." He ran a hand through his hair, leaving streaks of dust and blood. "There is an old line shack about an hour southeast, near the creek. It is not much, but it has walls and a roof. We can hole up there until Jack is strong enough to travel." They fashioned a travois using branches and rope, padding it with saddle blankets to make Jack as comfortable as possible. Kane's horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding named Copper, would pull it. It was slow, hard work getting Jack secured and starting the journey, but they managed. Olivia rode alongside the travois, ready to stop if Jack's condition worsened. While Kane led the way on foot, his rifle ready in case the Daltons or any other danger appeared. The sun was past its zenith when they reached the line shack, a weathered structure tucked into a grove of cottonwood trees near a clear running creek. It was better than Olivia had expected, with a stone fireplace, a rough table and chairs, and 2 narrow bunks built into the walls. They got Jack inside and settled him on one of the bunks. Then Kane went to tend the horses while Olivia started a fire and began heating water. When Kane returned, she had Jack's bandages changed and was checking his pulse. "He is holding steady," she reported. "Fever has not set in yet, which is a good sign. If we can keep him clean and quiet for a few days, he might pull through." Kane nodded and sank into one of the chairs, his exhaustion finally showing. "I owe you more than I can say. You saved his life today. Maybe mine too." He looked at her across the small space, and for the first time, she saw past the weariness and worry to the man beneath. He had strong features, she noticed, though perhaps a bit too harsh to be called handsome in the conventional sense. But there was something compelling about him, a quiet strength and intensity that drew her attention. "Tell me what happened," Olivia said, partly to distract herself from the way her pulse quickened when their eyes met, and partly because she genuinely wanted to know. She moved to the fire to make coffee from the supplies Kane kept stashed in the shack. Kane leaned back and closed his eyes briefly. "We were moving about 100 head to summer pasture up in the high country. It is a route we have used for years without trouble. But the Daltons must have been watching, waiting for the right moment. They hit us just as we entered the pass, when we were strung out and vulnerable. Tommy took a bullet in the shoulder but stayed on his horse and got away. I think they let him go so he could spread word of what happened, make people afraid. Jack was not so lucky." "And you stayed with him instead of going for help yourself," Olivia said, pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. "He is my friend," Kane said simply, as though that explained everything. Perhaps it did. "We have ridden together for 10 years, since we were both green kids who did not know the front end of a cow from the back. I was not going to leave him to die alone in that canyon." Olivia handed him a cup and sat across from him. The coffee was strong and bitter, but it was hot and welcome. "You run the Double Cross Ranch. I work there. The owner is a man named Samuel Cross. He took me on when I was 16 and had nothing but the clothes on my back. Taught me everything I know about ranching, about being a man." Kane's expression softened slightly. "He is getting on in years now, does not ride out much anymore. Jack and I pretty much run the day-to-day operations." They talked as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, and Olivia found herself relaxing despite their precarious situation. Kane was easy to talk to once he let his guard down, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. He asked about her life in Ventura, and she told him about running the general store with her father, about the endless parade of supplies and gossip that flowed through their doors. She found herself mentioning things she rarely spoke of, like how much she missed her mother, or how sometimes she felt trapped by the smallness of her world. "You could leave," Kane pointed out. "Go to San Francisco or even back east." "And do what?" Olivia asked. "I have no training except shopkeeping, and my father needs me. Besides, Ventura is home. I suppose I am like you, loyal to what I know." Kane smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his face and made him look younger. "I suppose you are." As evening fell, they took turns watching over Jack and sleeping. Olivia took the first watch, sitting beside the wounded man and monitoring his breathing while Kane stretched out on the floor near the fire. She found herself watching him sleep, noting the way his face relaxed, the faint scars that marked his hands and forearms. He was a working man, she thought, someone who lived by his strength and skill. Yet he had been so careful with Jack, so gentle when he could have been rough. It spoke to a kindness beneath the hard exterior. When she woke him for his watch several hours later, Kane rose stiffly and took her place beside Jack. "Get some real sleep," he told her. "You have earned it." Olivia meant to argue, but exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She curled up on the second bunk and was asleep within moments, tumbling into dreams of galloping horses and gray eyes that watched her with unexpected warmth. She woke to the smell of frying bacon and coffee. Pale dawn light filtered through the windows, and she could hear the creek babbling outside. Kane was at the fire, cooking breakfast with the practiced ease of someone who had spent many nights in camps and lined shacks. Jack was awake, she realized with relief, propped up on pillows and looking weak but alert. "Morning," Kane said when he noticed her stirring. "Thought you could use a proper meal." Olivia sat up and ran her fingers through her tangled hair, suddenly conscious of how disheveled she must look. "How is he?" "Sore as hell and mad that I am not letting him ride yet," Kane replied with a grin, "which means he is on the mend." Jack managed a weak smile. "I hear you are the one who patched me up, miss. I am grateful." "Olivia Sutton," she introduced herself, coming over to check his bandages. "And you are very welcome, though you gave us quite a fright." They spent the day at the lined shack, resting and letting Jack regain some strength. Olivia redressed his wounds and was pleased to see they were healing cleanly with no signs of infection. Kane fetched fresh water from the creek and checked on the horses, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon for trouble. But the land remained quiet, and as the day wore on, they all began to relax slightly. In the afternoon, when Jack was sleeping again, Kane asked Olivia to walk with him to check the horses. They followed the creek into the dappled shade of the cottonwoods, and Olivia breathed in the scent of water and growing things. After the intensity of yesterday, the peaceful moment felt almost dreamlike. "You should head back to Ventura tomorrow," Kane said abruptly. "Jack is stable enough that I can manage from here, and you have been away from your store for 2 days now. People will wonder." Olivia felt an unexpected pang at the thought of leaving. "Will he be all right?" "I think so, thanks to you." Kane stopped walking and turned to face her. "I still cannot quite believe you did what you did, coming out here alone into danger for people you did not even know." "I knew enough," Olivia said quietly. "I knew someone needed help and I could give it. That seemed reason enough." They stood there in the dappled sunlight, and the air between them suddenly felt charged with something Olivia could not quite name. Kane reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his calloused fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected tenderness. "You are remarkable, Olivia Sutton," he said softly. "I do not think I have met anyone quite like you." Her breath caught in her throat, and she found herself swaying toward him before common sense reasserted itself. She barely knew this man, she reminded herself, had met him only yesterday under the most extraordinary circumstances. Whatever she was feeling was surely just a product of heightened emotions and shared danger. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she saw something that made her heart race and her carefully constructed arguments crumble like sand. "I should check on Jack," she managed to say, taking a step back. Kane let his hand fall, but his eyes lingered on her face a moment longer before he nodded. That night, as they sat around the fire after supper, Jack asked Olivia about her family. She told them about her father, about how he had built the general store from nothing after bringing his young bride west from Missouri. About how her mother had died suddenly of fever, leaving her father lost and grieving until Olivia had grown old enough to help shoulder the burden of the store. "He never remarried?" Kane asked. Olivia shook her head. "He said he had his one great love and that was enough for a lifetime. Sometimes I think he is lonely, but he seems content with his memories." That is both beautiful and sad, Kane said thoughtfully. To love someone so much that no one else can compare. Have you ever felt that way about someone? The question was out before Olivia could stop it, and she felt her cheeks heat with embarrassment at her own boldness. Kane was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. No, he said finally. I have never let anyone close enough. This life, it does not leave much room for that sort of thing. You are always moving, always working. And women who want ranchers usually want the settled kind, the ones with big houses and steady incomes, not drifters like me who live season to season. You are not a drifter, Olivia protested. You have been at the Double Cross for 10 years. That is more settled than most. Kane smiled faintly. I suppose you are right, but I never thought much about the future, about things like marriage and family. Always figured I would just keep doing what I was doing until I got too old or too broken to do it anymore. He looked at her then, and there was something vulnerable in his expression. Meeting you has made me wonder if maybe I was wrong about that. Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. She knew she should say something light, something to deflect the intensity of the moment. Instead, she heard herself say, I wonder too. Jack cleared his throat loudly from his bunk, making them both jump. You two do realize I am right here, yes? Not that I am complaining about the entertainment, but maybe save the courting for when I am not trapped in a small room with you. They both laughed, the tension breaking, but Olivia felt Kane's eyes on her for the rest of the evening. When she finally climbed into her bunk, she lay awake for a long time, listening to the crackle of the fire and the quiet sounds of the men's breathing. Everything had changed in the span of 2 days, and she had no idea what came next. The only thing she knew for certain was that riding away tomorrow was going to be harder than she had imagined. But morning brought a complication that changed all their plans. They woke to the sound of riders approaching, and Kane was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. Olivia's heart leaped into her throat as she remembered the Daltons, but Kane held up a hand for silence and peered carefully through the window. It is all right, he said after a moment, relief clear in his voice. It is Samuel and some of the boys from the ranch. 3 men rode into the clearing, led by an older man with silver hair and a weathered face that spoke of decades spent outdoors. Samuel Cross dismounted with the stiffness of someone whose joints did not work as well as they once did, but his eyes were sharp as they took in the scene. Tommy said you were in trouble, Samuel said without preamble. Took us a while to figure out where you had holed up. His gaze moved to Olivia, standing uncertainly by the fire, and his eyebrows rose. And who might this young lady be? This is Olivia Sutton, Kane said quickly. She saved Jack's life. Hell, probably saved mine too. If she had not come when she did, Jack would be dead. Samuel's expression shifted from surprise to respect. Is that so? Then the Double Cross owes you a debt, Miss Sutton. He moved past Kane to check on Jack, who was sitting up now and looking much improved. How are you feeling, son? Like I got shot, Jack replied with a weak grin. But alive thanks to Miss Sutton. She rode out here alone, patched me up, and did not even flinch when things looked bad. Samuel turned back to Olivia with a thoughtful expression. You are a brave woman, Miss Sutton. We are in your debt. He glanced at Kane, and something passed between them that Olivia could not read. We brought a wagon to transport Jack. I think it is time we all headed back to the ranch. You too, Miss Sutton. At the very least, let us give you a proper meal and a comfortable bed before you make the journey back to Ventura. It is the least we can do. Olivia wanted to protest that she needed to get back to the store, but the truth was her father would not return for several more days, and the store could survive being closed for a short while longer. Besides, The thought of a real bath and a proper meal was almost irresistibly tempting after 2 days in the lined shack. "Thank you," she said. "I accept your hospitality." They loaded Jack carefully into the wagon, making him as comfortable as possible with blankets and pillows. Then they set out for the double cross, with Samuel driving the wagon and Kane riding beside it. Olivia rode Juniper, flanked by the 2 ranch hands who had come with Samuel. They were young men, perhaps in their early 20s, and they treated her with shy respect tinged with curiosity. She suspected that word of her ride to Coyote Pass would spread quickly through the ranching community. The Double Cross Ranch was more impressive than Olivia had expected. The main house was a sprawling adobe structure with a red tile roof and a wide veranda that wrapped around 3 sides. Outbuildings dotted the property, including a large barn, several corrals, and a bunkhouse where the ranch hands lived. Green pastures stretched as far as she could see, and cattle grazed peacefully in the summer heat. It was a prosperous operation, she realized, the kind of place that represented stability and success in this harsh land. A woman came out onto the veranda as they rode up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps in her 50s, with graying brown hair pulled back in a sensible bun and kind eyes that assessed the situation quickly. "I have beds ready," she called out. "Bring him inside." They carried Jack into the house, settling him in a comfortable bedroom on the ground floor. The woman, who introduced herself as Alina and explained she was the ranch cook and housekeeper, immediately took charge of his care with the kind of brisk efficiency that spoke of long experience. Olivia found herself gently but firmly ushered to another room where a hot bath had been prepared. She sank into the water with a sigh of pure bliss, letting the heat soak away the grime and tension of the past 2 days. Someone had left clean clothes on the bed, a simple calico dress that looked like it might have belonged to Alina in her younger days. It was a bit loose on Olivia's slender frame, but it was clean and freshly pressed, and she felt almost human again when she finally emerged. Kane was waiting on the veranda, cleaned up himself and wearing fresh clothes. He had shaved, and without the stubble, his face looked younger and more open. He stood as she approached, and the expression in his eyes made her pulse quicken. "You look lovely," he said, and there was no mistaking the sincerity in his voice. "Thank you," Olivia replied, suddenly feeling shy. "And thank you for all of this. You did not have to go to such trouble." "It is not trouble," Kane said. "Like Samuel said, we owe you. Besides," he added, his voice dropping lower, "I am not ready to say goodbye to you yet." Before Olivia could respond to that, Alina called them to supper. The dining room was warm and inviting, with a long table that could seat a dozen people. Tonight it was just Olivia, Kane, Samuel, and Alina, since Jack was eating in his room and the ranch hands ate in the bunkhouse. The food was simple but delicious. Beef stew with fresh bread and vegetables from Alina's garden, followed by peach pie that melted on the tongue over the meal. Samuel asked Olivia about herself, and she found him easy to talk to. He had a way of listening that made her feel heard, and his questions showed genuine interest rather than mere politeness. When she mentioned running the general store, his eyes lit up. "Your father is Richard Sutton?" he asked. "I have dealt with him many times over the years." "Good man, fair prices, honest dealings. You must take after him," Olivia smiled. "I try to. He taught me everything about the business." "Running a store is no easy thing, especially for a woman alone," Samuel observed. "You must be quite capable." "She is more than capable," Kane interjected. "She rode into an ambush site, patched up a gunshot wound, and did not panic once. That takes more than capability. That takes real courage." Samuel studied the two of them, and Olivia had the uncomfortable feeling that he was seeing far more than they were saying. "Well," he said mildly, "I am just glad our paths crossed with yours, Miss Sutton, though I wish it had been under better circumstances." After supper, Kane asked if she would like to walk around the ranch, and Olivia accepted eagerly. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and the evening air was finally beginning to cool. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, heading toward the corrals where horses dozed in the fading light. "This is a beautiful place," Olivia said, resting her arms on the top rail of the fence. "You must love working here." "I do," Kane admitted. "Samuel has been like a father to me. When I came here, I was angry and lost. My own father had died when I was 15, and I spent a year drifting, getting into trouble. Samuel saw past all that to something worth saving. He gave me a purpose, a place to belong." "What happened to your mother?" Olivia asked gently. "She died when I was born," Kane said. "It was always just me and my father. He was a good man, worked himself to death trying to make our small farm pay. When he died, I had nothing and no one, until I found my way here." Olivia felt a surge of empathy for the lonely, angry boy he must have been. "I understand loss," she said quietly. "After my mother died, I felt like the world had tilted sideways. It took a long time before things felt right again." Kane turned to look at her, and in the golden light of sunset, his eyes were luminous. "You understand a lot of things, I think. You see people clearly." He hesitated, then said, "Olivia, I know we have only known each other for 3 days. I know this is not sensible or practical, but I cannot stop thinking about you. From the moment you rode into that canyon, you have been in my head and my heart, and I do not know what to do about it." Olivia's breath caught. She should be cautious, she knew. Should protect her heart and be reasonable. But when had anything about this situation been reasonable? "I think about you too," she admitted. "More than I should, given how little time we have spent together. But it feels like I have known you much longer, like meeting you was something I was meant to do." Kane reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and strong as they laced with hers. "Stay," he said. "Not just tonight, stay longer. Let us see where this goes. Your father will not be back for days yet, and the store can wait. Please, Olivia, give us a chance." She knew she should say no, knew that the prudent thing was to return to Ventura tomorrow and resume her normal life. But when she looked at Kane, at the hope and vulnerability in his face, she found she could not deny him, could not deny herself. "I will stay," she said softly, and watched joy bloom across his features. He pulled her close then, and she went willingly into his arms. They stood there in the gathering darkness, holding each other as the stars began to appear overhead. It was not a passionate embrace, but something deeper and more tender. A promise of possibilities, of futures they might build together. Over the next few days, Olivia settled into life at the Double Cross with an ease that surprised her. Alina put her to work helping in the kitchen and with various household tasks, and Olivia found she enjoyed the change from storekeeping. She checked on Jack regularly and was pleased to see him improving steadily. Most of all, she spent time with Kane, learning about him and the life he led. He took her riding across the ranch, showing her the boundaries of the property and the places he loved best. There was a high meadow where wildflowers bloomed in profusion, and a grove of ancient oaks where the air was always cool and green. He introduced her to the other ranch hands, and she met them all with friendly interest, asking about their work and lives. They seemed charmed by her genuine curiosity and lack of pretension. In the evenings, they sat on the veranda with Samuel and Alina, talking about everything and nothing. Samuel told stories about the early days of the ranch, when the land had been wild and settlements few and far between. Alina shared her knowledge of herbs and healing, and Olivia soaked it all in like a sponge. Kane mostly listened, but his eyes rarely left Olivia's face, and she felt the warmth of his regard like sunlight on her skin. On the fourth day, Kane took her to a bend in the creek where cottonwood trees created a natural canopy, and the water ran clear and cold over smooth stones. They had packed a lunch, and they spread a blanket on the soft grass and ate bread and cheese and cold chicken while the creek sang its eternal song. "I need to go back soon," Olivia said reluctantly, watching the play of light on the water. "My father will return in a few days, and I should be there when he arrives." Kane was quiet for a moment, then said, "I know. I have been trying not to think about it." He rolled onto his side to face her, propping himself up on one elbow. "Come back, though. Visit us again. Visit me." "I will," Olivia promised. "This is not goodbye, Kane. I do not want it to be." "Neither do I." He reached out and traced the line of her jaw with gentle fingers. "Olivia, I am falling in love with you. I know it is too soon to say such things, but I have never been good at hiding what I feel. You have turned my world upside down in the best possible way." Tears stung Olivia's eyes, but they were happy tears. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I did not think it was possible to feel this way so quickly, but here we are." Kane closed the distance between them and kissed her then, a slow, sweet kiss that tasted of sunshine and promise. Olivia melted into it, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair as she poured everything she felt into that moment. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard, and Kane rested his forehead against hers. "When you come back, I am going to court you properly," he said. "Take you to dances and bring you flowers and do everything right. And then, if you will have me, I am going to ask you to marry me." "Yes," Olivia said simply. Kane pulled back to look at her, surprise and joy warring in his expression. "Yes. Yes to all of it," she clarified with a laugh. "Court me, bring me flowers, ask me to marry you. My answer will be yes." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and for a while they lost themselves in each other, in the wonder of new love and infinite possibilities. The creek burbled on, uncaring, and the cottonwoods whispered their approval in the warm breeze. That evening, over dinner, Olivia announced that she would be leaving in the morning. Samuel nodded understandingly, though his eyes were kind. "You will always be welcome here, Miss Sutton. I hope we will see you again soon." "You will," Olivia assured him. "Very soon, if I have my way." Elena gave her a knowing smile. "I suspect we will be seeing quite a bit of you in the future, dear. And I, for one, could not be more pleased." The next morning, Kane saddled Juniper for her while Olivia said her goodbyes to Jack, who was now well enough to sit up and walk short distances. "Thank you for saving my worthless hide," he said with a grin, "and for making Kane here realize there is more to life than work and sleep." "Take care of yourself, Jack," Olivia said, squeezing his hand, "and do not go getting shot again." "I will do my best." Kane rode with her for the first hour, reluctant to let her go even though they both knew she had to return. When they finally reached the point where they had to part ways, he pulled her close one more time. "I will come to Ventura as soon as I can," he promised. "A week at most. I need to make sure Jack is fully recovered and help get the ranch back to normal after everything that has happened. But then I am coming for you, Olivia Sutton." "I will be waiting," she said, and kissed him goodbye. The ride back to Ventura felt both too long and too short. Olivia had time to think about everything that had happened, about how her life had changed in the space of less than a week. She had gone from a quiet, predictable existence to something wild and wonderful and terrifying. By the time she reached the familiar streets of her hometown, she felt like a different person from the woman who had galloped out of here days ago. The general store was just as she had left it, though dust had gathered on the counters and the air inside was stale. Olivia threw open the windows and set about cleaning and restocking, falling back into familiar routines. But her mind was miles away, at her ranch where a certain cowboy was probably working in the hot sun and thinking of her. Her father returned 2 days later, exhausted from his journey but relieved to find everything in order. Olivia told him an edited version of what had happened, explaining that she had helped tend to an injured ranch hand and had been delayed in returning. She left out the parts about riding alone into an ambush site and falling desperately in love. Some things, she decided, could wait for the right moment. True to his word, Kane appeared in Ventura exactly 1 week after she had left the Double Cross. Olivia was in the store, serving a customer, when she looked up and saw him standing in the doorway. Her heart performed an acrobatic leap in her chest, and she had to force herself to finish the transaction calmly before hurrying over to him. "You came," she said, unable to keep the joy from her voice. "I said I would," Kane replied, his eyes drinking her in. "I have missed you, Olivia, every single day. I have missed you too." She glanced around, aware that they were drawing curious looks from the other customers. "Come meet my father properly, and then perhaps we can take a walk." Richard Sutton was a tall man in his late 50s, with graying hair and shrewd blue eyes that missed nothing. He studied Kane with the kind of careful assessment that fathers have perfected over generations. "So you are the young man my daughter helped," he said. "I understand you are from the Double Cross Ranch." "Yes, sir," Kane replied respectfully. "I came to thank Miss Sutton properly for what she did and to pay our debt to her." "There is no debt," Richard said firmly. "My daughter did what she felt was right. That is not something you can repay with money." "I agree, sir," Kane said. "That is why I came to offer something else. My respect, my gratitude, and if you will permit it, my courtship of your daughter." Richard's eyebrows rose, and he looked at Olivia, who felt her cheeks heat but held her father's gaze steadily. "Is this what you want, Olivia?" he asked gently. "Yes, father," she said. "It is." He was quiet for a long moment, studying them both. Then slowly he smiled. "I always knew that when you fell in love, it would be sudden and sure. You are like your mother that way. She took one look at me and announced to her father that she had met the man she would marry." His expression grew wistful. He did not believe her at first, but she was right. "We had 30 good years together before she left us." "I hope to give Olivia at least that many," Kane said quietly, "and more if I am blessed." Richard nodded. "Then you have my permission to court my daughter, Kane Yates. But know this, she is the most precious thing in my world. If you hurt her, you will answer to me." "I understand, sir," Kane said, meeting his eyes steadily. "And I give you my word that I will do everything in my power to make her happy." Over the following months, Kane was true to his promise. He rode into Ventura every week, sometimes twice if he could manage it, courting Olivia with a quiet intensity that left no doubt about his feelings. He brought her wildflowers from the high meadow, took her on picnics by the creek, and spent long evenings on the porch of the general store talking with her and her father about everything under the sun. The whole town soon knew that Olivia Sutton was being courted by Kane Yates from the Double Cross Ranch, and opinion was generally favorable. Kane was known as a hard worker and an honest man, qualities that counted for much in their community. The story of how Olivia had ridden out alone to help him had spread and grown in the telling, until she was something of a local legend herself. In October, when the air turned crisp and the leaves began to change, Kane asked Olivia to ride out to the Double Cross with him for a visit. They had made the journey several times over the summer, and Olivia had grown close to Samuel and Alina, who treated her like family. This time, though, Kane seemed nervous, and she suspected she knew why. They rode out to the cottonwood grove by the creek, to the same spot where they had first confessed their feelings for each other. The trees were golden now, and leaves drifted down like lazy snowflakes, carpeting the ground in amber. Kane helped her dismount, then took both her hands in his. "Olivia Sutton," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I told you months ago that I was falling in love with you. That has not changed, except that I am no longer falling. I have fallen completely, irrevocably, head over heels in love with you. You are my first thought in the morning and my last thought at night. You make me want to be a better man, to build a life worth sharing. I do not have much to offer you except my heart, my hands, and a life on this ranch. But if that is enough, if I am enough, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" He pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple gold band with a small sapphire that caught the afternoon light. "It was my mother's," he said. "The only thing I have of hers. My father gave it to me before he died and told me to give it to a woman worth spending a lifetime with. That is you, Olivia. You are that woman." Tears streamed down Olivia's face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with joy. "Yes, Kane, I will marry you. There is nothing in this world I want more." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as though it had been waiting all these years for her. Then he swept her into his arms and kissed her with all the pent-up longing and love of the past months, and she kissed him back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time, giddy with happiness. They were married in December, in the small church in Ventura with half the town in attendance. Olivia wore a cream-colored dress that had belonged to her mother, altered to fit her slender frame. Kane wore a new suit that Samuel had insisted on buying for him, and he looked so handsome that Olivia's breath caught when she saw him waiting at the altar. Her father walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and when he placed her hand in Kane's, he whispered, "Be happy, my dear girl. You deserve all the happiness in the world." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause and cheers. They celebrated with a reception at the town hall, with music and dancing and food that Alina had spent days preparing. Samuel gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying in equal measure, talking about how Kane had come to the ranch as a lost boy and was leaving as a man who had found his purpose. "And Olivia," Samuel said, raising his glass to her, "you rode into our lives like an avenging angel and saved more than just Jack's life that day. You saved Kane's heart from loneliness. For that, you have my eternal gratitude and love. Welcome to the family, daughter." That night, Kane carried Olivia over the threshold of the small house on the double cross that Samuel had given them as a wedding present. It was not large, but it was solid and well built, with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that looked out over the pastures. Alina had filled it with furniture and linens, and a fire crackled in the hearth, filling the space with warmth and light. "Welcome home, Mrs. Yates," Kane said softly, setting Olivia on her feet but keeping his arms around her. "Home," Olivia repeated, testing the word. It felt right, she realized. This place, this man, this life they were beginning together. It all felt deeply, perfectly right. Their first year of marriage was not without its challenges. Olivia had to adjust to ranch life, learning new skills and routines. There were early mornings and long days, unexpected disasters and hard work. But there was also joy and laughter, and the deep satisfaction of building something together. Kane was a patient teacher and a devoted husband, and Olivia fell more in love with him with each passing day. Richard visited often, pleased to see his daughter so happy. He and Kane developed a strong friendship, bonding over their shared love for Olivia and their respect for each other's work ethic. When Richard mentioned that he was thinking about retiring and closing the store, Kane suggested they keep it running, with Olivia and him taking over the management. It would give them additional income and allow Richard to take things easier without losing the business he had spent decades building. They implemented the plan the following year, with Olivia spending part of each week in Ventura running the store while Kane managed the ranch. It was a balancing act, but they made it work, supporting each other through the busy times and celebrating their successes together. In the spring of 1880, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Kane one evening as they sat on the porch of their little house, watching the sun set over the pastures. He stared at her for a long moment, as though he could not quite process the words, and then he let out a whoop of joy that probably scared every animal within a mile. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are going to have a baby," he kept repeating, wonder in his voice. "Olivia, we are going to be parents." Their son was born in early December, a healthy baby with Kane's dark hair and Olivia's blue eyes. They named him Matthew Richard Yates, after both his grandfathers. Kane was utterly smitten from the first moment he held his son, and Olivia watched with a full heart as her rough, tough cowboy husband became gentle as a lamb around their baby. Samuel and Alina doted on Matthew, as did Richard, who made the journey from Ventura at least once a week to see his grandson. The ranch hands built Matthew a cradle and took turns whittling toys for him. He was surrounded by love from the moment he entered the world. Life settled into a new rhythm, one punctuated by Matthew's needs and milestones. Olivia had never been happier, though she was also more exhausted than she had ever been in her life. Kane helped however he could, walking the floor with Matthew when he was fussy at night, changing diapers without complaint, and watching the baby so Olivia could sleep or have time to herself. "You are a natural father," Olivia told him one night, watching as he rocked Matthew to sleep with infinite patience. "I had a good example in Samuel," Kane replied, "and I want to be for Matthew what my father was for me, someone he can count on, someone who will always be there." When Matthew was 2, Olivia became pregnant again. This time, it was a girl, born in the summer of 1883. They named her Catherine Olivia Yates, and she had her mother's auburn hair and her father's gray eyes. Kane, who had been nervous about having a daughter, fell completely under her spell the moment he saw her tiny face. "I am in trouble," he told Olivia with a rueful smile as he cradled Catherine in his arms. "This little one is going to have me wrapped around her finger for life." "Just like her mother," Olivia teased, and Kane laughed and pulled her close for a kiss. The years rolled on, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Matthew grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with the horses. Catherine was full of mischief and laughter, always getting into things she should not and charming her way out of trouble. They added a third child in 1886, another boy they named James Samuel Yates in honor of Samuel, who had passed away peacefully in his sleep the year before. His death had hit them all hard, but especially Kane, who had lost the closest thing to a father he had known in his adult life. "He would be so proud of you," Olivia told Kane as they stood by Samuel's grave after the funeral. "Of the man you have become, of the family we have built. He loved you like a son." "I know," Kane said quietly, tears streaming down his face, "and I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor his memory." Samuel had left the ranch to Kane in his will, a gesture that had shocked and humbled them both. It meant they were now the owners of the Double Cross, responsible for its success and the livelihoods of everyone who worked there. It was a heavy responsibility, but Kane rose to meet it with the same determination he brought to everything in life. Alina stayed on, helping to raise the children and manage the household. She became like a grandmother to Matthew, Catherine, and James, and she and Olivia developed a close friendship built on mutual respect and affection. Richard remained a constant presence as well, splitting his time between the store in Ventura and the ranch, delighting in his grandchildren and the life his daughter had built. In 1889, when Matthew was 9, Catherine 6, and James 3, Olivia became pregnant one last time. The pregnancy was harder than the others, and she spent much of it on bed rest, worried and frustrated. Kane was endlessly patient, taking over all her duties without complaint and making sure she rested as the doctor ordered. Their fourth child, a girl they named Olivia Yates, was born in early winter, small but healthy. Looking at her tiny daughter, Olivia felt a rush of love so intense it brought tears to her eyes. Their family was complete now, she knew. 4 children to love and raise, to watch grow and find their own paths in life. As the years passed, the Double Cross continued to prosper under Kane's management. He was a fair boss and a smart rancher, respected by everyone who worked for him and known throughout the territory for his integrity. Olivia managed the store in Ventura with the same skill her father had shown, and between the two enterprises, they were able to provide a comfortable life for their growing family. Matthew showed early promise as a rancher, following his father everywhere and soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Catherine announced at age 10 that she wanted to be a doctor, and while some people scoffed at the idea of a female physician, Kane and Olivia encouraged her dreams. James was the musician of the family, with a natural talent for the guitar that delighted everyone. And Rose, the baby, was showing signs of inheriting her mother's business acumen, always negotiating deals with her siblings and coming out ahead. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Kane took Olivia back to the Cottonwood Grove where he had proposed. The children were spending the night with Alina and Richard, giving them a rare evening alone together. They spread a blanket on the ground, just as they had done so many times before, and lay back to watch the stars emerge in the darkening sky. 10 years, Kane mused, pulling Olivia close against his side. It seems like both forever and no time at all. I know what you mean, Olivia said softly. Sometimes I look at our children and cannot believe they are real, that we made them together. And then other times, I cannot remember what my life was like before you. Do you have any regrets? Kane asked. About leaving the store, about the life you could have had in town. Olivia propped herself up on her elbow to look at him, wanting him to see the truth in her eyes. Not a single one, she said firmly. Kane, you and our children are everything to me. This life we have built together is more than I ever dreamed possible. I would not change a moment of it. He pulled her down for a long, deep kiss that still made her toes curl even after 10 years of marriage. I love you, Olivia Yates, he said when they finally broke apart. More today than yesterday, and I will love you even more tomorrow. That is the most romantic thing you have ever said, Olivia teased, though her eyes were bright with tears. I have had 10 years to practice, Kane replied with a grin. They made love under the stars that night, with the tenderness and passion of a couple who knew each other's bodies and hearts completely. And when they finally rode back to the ranch house, where their children slept peacefully, they did so hand in hand, partners in every sense of the word. Richard passed away in 1892, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 70. He had lived long enough to see all his grandchildren, to know that Olivia was happy and settled, and to make peace with losing his beloved wife all those years ago. At his funeral, Olivia spoke about the man who had taught her everything, who had supported her dreams and loved her unconditionally. Kane stood beside her, his hand on her back, solid and supportive, and she knew her father had died happy knowing she was well cared for. Life continued its steady march forward. Matthew married at 21, bringing home a sweet young woman named Anna who fit into the family perfectly. They had the first grandchild, a boy, when Olivia was 42, and she marveled at the circle of life that had turned her into a grandmother. Catherine did indeed become a doctor, one of the first female physicians in California, and set up a practice in San Francisco where she treated patients of all backgrounds. James traveled for a while, playing his guitar in saloons and concert halls, before eventually returning to the ranch with a wife and a deeper appreciation for home. Rose took over management of the store in Ventura, showing a business savvy that would have made her grandfather proud. Kane's hair turned silver at the temples, and lines deepened around his eyes and mouth, but Olivia thought he had never been more handsome. He was still strong and capable, though he no longer did the heavy ranch work himself, leaving that to Matthew and the younger hands. Instead, he focused on the business side of things, making deals and planning for the future. He and Olivia spent more time together as the children grew up and moved into their own lives, rediscovering the easy companionship and deep love that had brought them together in the first place. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch, inviting everyone they had ever known or worked with. The house and yard were packed with people, and there was music and laughter and more food than any gathering could possibly consume. Speech after speech praised Kane and Olivia, talking about their generosity, their leadership, and most of all, their enduring love for each other. When it was Kane's turn to speak, he pulled Olivia to her feet beside him and looked out at the assembled crowd. 25 years ago, he said, his voice carrying clearly, a brave, foolish woman rode alone into danger to help a man she had never met. She saved my friend's life, and in doing so, she saved mine as well. I fell in love with her immediately, though I think it took her a little longer to come around. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Olivia elbowed him playfully. Since that day, Kane continued, his voice growing more serious, she has been my partner, my love, my best friend, and the mother of my children. She has made me happier than I ever thought possible, and I thank God every day that she chose to ride out to Coyote Pass instead of waiting for someone else to help. He turned to face Olivia fully, taking her hands in his. You are still the bravest person I know, Olivia Yates. Thank you for 25 incredible years. I look forward to spending the rest of my life with you. There was not a dry eye in the house, Olivia's included. I love you, she whispered, and kissed him as the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. They danced that night under strings of lanterns, moving together as naturally as breathing. Their children danced nearby with their own families, and Olivia felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This was what happiness looked like, she thought. Not the dramatic, breathless excitement of new love, but the steady, enduring warmth of a life well lived together. The years continued to pass, marked by births and deaths, successes and challenges. Kane and Olivia grew older together, their hair turning white and their steps slowing, but their love never wavered. They sat on the porch of their house in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sun set over land they had worked and loved for decades. They told stories to their grandchildren, who listened with wide eyes to tales of ambushes and rescues, of a woman who rode alone to help a stranger and ended up finding her soulmate. On a warm spring day in 1910, when Olivia was 62 and Kane 64, they took one last ride together to the Cottonwood Grove. It was harder now, their bodies not as spry as they once were, but they managed. They sat on a blanket beneath the ancient trees, listening to the creek and the birds, surrounded by wildflowers. "You remember the first time we came here?" Kane asked, his voice rough with age but still warm with love. "Of course," Olivia said, leaning against his shoulder. "I told you I was falling in love with you and you kissed me." "Best decision I ever made," Kane said. "Well, second best. The best was staying alive long enough for you to find me." Olivia laughed, the sound still bright and clear despite the years. "I am glad you did. I cannot imagine my life without you in it." "You will never have to," Kane promised, kissing the top of her head. "In this life or the next, I will always be with you." They sat there for hours, talking and remembering, celebrating a love that had endured through decades and would continue to endure through whatever came next. When they finally rode back to the ranch, they did so hand in hand, just as they had on their 10th anniversary, just as they had done countless times throughout their marriage. The double cross continued to thrive under Matthew's management when Kane finally retired fully at 68. He and Olivia spent their final years surrounded by children, grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren, a testament to the love they had shared and the life they had built. They told their story often, wanting the younger generations to understand that true love was worth fighting for, worth riding into danger for, worth every risk and sacrifice. Kane passed away peacefully in his sleep at 74, with Olivia holding his hand. She was heartbroken but not bitter, knowing they had been blessed with far more years together than many couples received. She lived another 5 years, spending her time with family and keeping Kane's memory alive through stories and laughter. When she finally joined him, she was laid to rest beside him beneath a cottonwood tree, their graves marked with a simple stone that read, "Kane and Olivia Yates, together forever." Their children ensured that the ranch continued to prosper, honoring the legacy their parents had built. The story of how Kane and Olivia met became family legend, told and retold with each generation. How a young woman had received a desperate message and sent it on, then rode out herself to help, refusing to leave a stranger to die alone. How a cowboy had been rendered speechless by her courage and had fallen instantly in love. How from that single act of bravery had sprung a love story for the ages, a partnership that had lasted through joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge, until death finally parted them. But even death could not truly separate them, for their love lived on in the children they had raised, in the ranch they had built together, in the memories of everyone who had known them. The Double Cross Ranch stood as a monument to what two people could accomplish when they worked together, loved deeply, and never gave up on each other. And sometimes, on quiet spring evenings when the cottonwood leaves whispered in the breeze, and the creek sang its eternal song, people swore they could see two figures sitting together beneath the trees, holding hands and watching the sunset, their love transcending time and mortality itself. Whether it was really them or simply a trick of the light and shadow, no one could say for certain. But those who believed in the power of true love liked to think that Kane and Olivia had found a way to stay together, even beyond death, in the place where their love story had truly begun. The wildflowers that grew in that spot were always more vibrant, more abundant than anywhere else on the ranch, as though nourished by something more than soil and sun and rain. As though nourished by love itself, the greatest force in the universe, the one thing that truly could conquer all obstacles and last forever. And perhaps in their own way, those wildflowers were right. For love like Kane and Olivia's did not die. It simply transformed, spreading its seeds through generations, inspiring others to be brave, to take chances, to ride out into danger if it meant helping someone in need. That was their true legacy, the gift they left to the world, the example of a love built on courage, sustained by partnership, and lasting far beyond the span of any single lifetime. Their great-grandchildren still worked the Double Cross Ranch well into the 20th century, and they made sure that every new generation knew the story. Knew about the day Olivia Sutton sent a message for help and then rode out herself, refusing to wait for others to act. Knew about how Kane Yates had been left speechless by her bravery and determination. Knew that from that extraordinary beginning had come an ordinary, beautiful life filled with hard work, laughter, children, and most of all, love. It was a story worth remembering, worth telling, worth believing in. Because in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, in a time when survival often depended on strength and luck and the kindness of strangers, their story proved that love was real, that it could flourish even in the hardest circumstances, and that sometimes taking a risk on someone you barely knew could lead to a lifetime of happiness. That message resonated through the decades, inspiring countless others to take chances on love, to be brave when it mattered most, and to believe that happy endings were possible, even in the Wild West where life was hard and unpredictable, and often far too short. The end of their story was really just a beginning, the start of a legacy that would continue as long as there were people to remember them. And remember them they did, with love and pride and gratitude, knowing that Kane and Olivia Yates had shown them all what it meant to truly live, to love without reservation, and to build something lasting from a single moment of courage in a canyon on a hot August day in 1878.